this tyrannical Saul that rises up before us today, this troublesome and murderous citizen of Tarsus, he started out on the road to Damascus. In his possession are letters and affidavits authorizing him to arrest anyone who in the name of Jesus. All of a sudden he falls to the ground and discovered that he is now blind. Now I want you to fix this scene in your mind. He's now on the ground and he's blind. Now if you fix that scene in your mind, let's go to the other side of the chronological parallel. Look at him lying there, wallowing on the ground. See all his debris of deadly doctrine, filled with loaded propaganda, now blowing in the wind. Look at his letters and affidavits, lost and littering the roadside. Watch him there, with trembling in his hands, blinds over his eyes, a strange feeling in his heart, and the dust of the Damascus road in his throat. Behold him now, as he must be led by one of his deputies, no longer able to see. He must be led around. But let's go to the other side of this chronological parallel. Meanwhile, at that same time, a country unlettered and unrefined, unheard of fellow named Ananias was protesting, but kept packing. He is protesting because he has been called upon to lay hands on Paul. And he knows how tyrannical and treacherous Paul was. So he's protesting. He does not want to go home, but he keeps on packing. That's one of the first traits that a man of humility and service must have. You may not want to do it, but if God told you to do it, just keep on packing. Protest if you must, but keep packing. Now, I don't know how a lot of preachers got in their minds that Ananias was some big preacher. Nowhere in this text is he referred to as a preacher. He's simply called a disciple of Christ. One of God's believers, but I'm not going to argue that point. I don't have time to get into that frivolous argument. And in the second place, it matters not to me whether he was preacher or layman. What matters to me is that he obeyed the voice of God. Now, if you fix that scene in your mind, it ought to teach you at least three things. The first thing it should teach you is that God uses the Ananias of this world to make Paul's possible. I don't care how great Paul became. It took an Ananias to get him started. His ministry is launched by an unlettered and unknown, a man unrecognizable, who I doubt knew the difference between a verb and a noun. But it took him to get Paul started. God uses the Ananias of this world to make Paul's possible. So don't ever get so grand. Don't ever rise up so high now and declare that you are self-made. And I've seen people just like that. I've seen men and women who act like God ought to just be jumping up and down to have them on program. I think I ought to tell you that God is not in need of your service. You ought to be happy to be on this program because God can get along without you. You hear how lovely these men were singing? God appreciates it, but he doesn't need it. He can do without you. He has a Baltimore Oriole. He has a golden-throated warbler. He has a canary. He has many songbirds that can sing the message of the gospel without using you. He's not in need of my services. Doesn't need me to preach. God can put the gospel on the wind and blow it all over the world. One day he made a rooster crow about it. He made a mule talk about it. He surely is not in need of my services. So stop acting